Hello, and thank you for inviting me into your homes once again. I thought I would start by thanking you for your lovely comments. It's so appreciated, and I mean that sincerely. These shows are for you. Think of them as mini serenades from yours truly, Crabapple, to you, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you are. Let's crack on, shall we? After all, it's why you're here. Hark! Is that a wheezing, groaning sound I hear? The noise of TARDIS? Doctor Who, a brilliant yet eccentric inventor, creates a time machine called TARDIS, shaped just like a police box that can take anyone through space and time. Alongside his granddaughters, Susan, Barbara, and her bumbling boyfriend Ian, they inadvertently embark on an adventurous journey to another world. Their travels lead them to the planet Skaro, a dead planet, where they encounter two warring alien races, the peaceful Thals and the ruthless Daleks, bubbling masses of hate encased in a metallic shell. Doctor Who and his companions find themselves caught in the middle of this conflict, striving to help the Thals defeat the Daleks and restore peace to Skaro. As Doctor Who and his allies face danger and adversity, they must rely on their courage, resourcefulness, and ingenuity to overcome the formidable Dalek menace and ensure the survival of the Thal race before the goodies all get vaporized by the baddies using an atomic bomb.
When shall we explode the bomb? Immediately!
There exists a plethora of literature and analysis surrounding the renowned television series Doctor Who. However, for those who may be newly acquainted with the programme, previously disinterested but now intrigued due to its association with Amicus, or perhaps unaware of its existence altogether, allow me to provide a brief overview. Doctor Who has maintained its robust presence since its inception in 1963. However, recent developments have seen the series adopt a new approach. It has currently been flogged to Disney by an ailing BBC and is now colloquially referred to as Doctor Woke, enjoyed by the few, not the many. Good luck with that one.
Shut up and pass me a peanut butter and KY jelly sandwich. Camping has given you an appetite? Yes, I'm looking forward to waking up in the morning with a boiled egg and two lovely thick soldiers.
The inaugural episode of Doctor Who, titled An Unearthly Child, hit television screens in November of 1963. It was strategically positioned to serve as a bridge between daytime sports programming and evening light entertainment on Saturdays. This story served to introduce the audience to the series' characters and was set amidst the backdrop of prehistoric times. Despite the British Broadcasting Corporation's initial reluctance to feature Martians, this constraint somewhat waned by the second instalment. In this subsequent story, called The Dead Planet, the Doctor, alongside his granddaughter and 2 teachers, finds himself transported to a planet ravaged by nuclear radiation. Here they become embroiled in a gripping conflict between the peace-loving albino Thals and the militaristic Daleks, who bear striking resemblance to Nazis. To circumvent the directive against featuring traditional bug-eyed monsters, the Daleks were carefully portrayed as robotic entities concealing a sinister mutation, once humanoid in form. This adventure captivated the nation and marked the beginning of Doctor Who's widespread popularity, featuring what many consider to be one of the finest cliffhangers in the realm of science fiction television. I know I do. Subotsky recognised the zeitgeist of Dalek fever and approached the British Broadcasting Corporation, producer of the show Verity Lambert, and Dalek creator Terry Nation, and secured to use the rights of the Daleks and adapt the Dead Planet TV script for the big screen. Subotsky got a bloody good deal, as he managed to acquire the lot for £500. To add the cherry on the bakewell, Subotsky also got the nod to produce 2 other Dalek ventures for Amicus in the future. More on those later. The first thing Subotsky needed to do was to bastardise the plot. Subotsky had a 7-part series of 25-minute episodes to condense into an 80-minute feature-length film. Most of the political elements were jettisoned and the grimmer-tone reduced significantly. Prior to putting pen to paper, Subotsky and Rosenberg approached Cushing for the lead. The small-screen incarnation portrayed by William Hartnell was adapted and made more kinder and less irascible, and Hartnell wasn't asked to play the part simply because he was lesser known than Peter Cushing in the USA. Hammer films were rated mainly for families in the States, and so Peter Cushing was well established with young and old alike. Although happy to take the part, Cushing said of Hartnell's slight snub,
"It seems a shame Bill isn't doing the film because he's so good in the part. I remember how I felt when they were casting for the film 1984. I was so keen to repeat my TV role, but they gave it to Edmund O'Brien instead. All part of life's ups and downs."
With 2 surefire box office attractions, Cushing and the Daleks, in the bag, a budget of approximately £180,000 was secured with ease. British Lion were happy to fund the flick, along with further funding from Joe Vigoda through his Regal International Distribution Company. For the film, Regal and British Lion agreed to distribute the feature under the new name of Aru Productions. Freddie Francis wasn't available to bring the Daleks to the silver screen, and so Gordon Fleming was asked to direct. He was last on the Amicus payroll for their last gasp into teen rock and roll musical mayhem with Just for Fun. Roy Castle was approached to play the part of companion Ian, as Subotsky preferred to steer the film into comedic territory, with Castle as a light relief. Plus, he was already known to Amicus for a stint in Dr. Terror. Alas, at times Castle can get on your nerves with slight scenery chewing, but doesn't do a bad job overall once he gets into his stride. Roy Castle intentionally avoided watching William Russell's screen incarnation as Ian, and the film plot changed Ian from educator to suitor. Roy Castle reasoned,
"I think sometimes that's a bad idea. I sat down with the producer and worked it out between us. I wanted to bring my personality to it, rather than copy someone else's."
In one of her earliest screen roles, actress Jenny Linden was approached by Amicus to play granddaughter Barbara and Ian's bit of skirt, or as she is here, Ian's bit of stirrup pants. Finally, for the part of Susan, or Susie as she is known here, was child actress Roberta Tovey, a competent child actress ideally suited for the role for an old head on young shoulders.
it's all the same to you, sir, perhaps we could be making our way home now, huh?
What? Missed the chance of learning something about an unknown planet?
Coward. I, for one, am going to investigate. Come on, Grandfather.
Apparently, as an incentive during filming, Fleming paid Tovey $1 whenever she did a scene in one take. This made her so much money that Fleming retracted the offer for the sequel. Filming began mid-March of 1965 for 6 weeks. Unlike the eerie, monochrome claustrophobia of the TV show, Amicus decided to go full-on gaudy, pumping up the polychromatic with the brassy blushes of Technicolor. Comic strip pulp and kitsch epic were the order of the day, and when it came to Bill Constable's art direction for the alien world, plastic fantastic it is too. The copper interior of the Dalek city cost £13,000 and took up 18,000 square feet at Shepperton Studios. Subotsky was over the moon, and on the record is saying,
"It's probably the world's first plastic set. It's all plastic, but looks metallic. We used all sorts of new materials. Over on stage H, there was a petrified forest with pink and blue skies that might not have been out of place in a comic book."
Cushing's portrayal of the Doctor has a much warmer tone in character and is a dotty inventor from Earth rather than a mysterious, unpredictable alien fugitive epitomised by Bill Hartnell, especially in Hartnell's earlier exploits in the TV programme. His dress sense here is less Edwardian than his TV counterpart and becomes more vivid and an ideal clash for the psychedelic cycloramas and intense primary colours of a Scaro night. I love his necktie and wore something similar in my 20s, which went well with my paisley shirt. The special effects were achieved by Alan Bryce, who recalled,
"I do remember a scene that was cut from the first film. There's a scene where they force the top off a Dalek, look inside and react with horror. You never saw inside, but we did. We made a green, writhing ucky thing for the inside of the Dalek. Somebody was underneath the creature with their hands inside it, making it writhe. I think it was the editor's decision to cut it, and as far as I remember it was the only thing that was cut. This was the sort of thing you couldn't show in a U-certificate film."
Another change was the extermination process on the TV screen. A nifty negative transition happens with each ray gun blast. However, it was felt that this would be less effective in colour. Subotsky originally favoured flamethrowers. The British Board of Film Censors did not, claiming that would be far too frightening for children. During a brainstorming session and after abortive attempts at how the Daleks would zap their victims, a fire extinguisher death ray was settled upon and given the green light. One more vetoed scene was an attack from a tentacled mutation from the swamp. For the furious marketing campaign, the Daleks cropped up at Cannes Film Festival in the May of 1965 to a bewildered and slightly intrigued audience, as Doctor Who had been exported by BBC worldwide, but alas, not to Europe. The Daleks also were loaded onto trucks and journeyed around the UK nationwide, to the thrills of children and adults alike. At the height of Dalek mania at this time, a raft of merchandise flooded the market. In June 1965, in time for the children's school holidays, Doctor Who and the Daleks was launched onto the cinema circuit. Understandably, due to a decent marketing campaign and the standalone success of the TV series, the film was a huge success in the UK. Film critics were less impressed. Variety said it was
a slice of sci-fi for beginners. A few more thrills and a rather more edged script would have made Doctor Who a shade more acceptable. Gordon Fleming has played his direction straight. However, his chore would have been helped if the screenplay had a little bit more bite and inventiveness. Peter Cushing plays Doctor Who with amiable gravity. It will be interesting to see how the film stands up to stiffer Yank sci-fi competition.
The Times bitched.
"The technical advantages of the cinema over the television only show the shoddiness of the sets and the dialogue, which is too feeble even to be funny."
Guinea Weekly, on the other hand, were much more direct by stating simply that Doctor Who and the Daleks was simply a
surefire popular moneymaker.
According to Kinney Weekly, the movie also broke into the top 20 list of 1965's celluloid money makers. Sadly, in the USA, the Daleks failed to conquer and bombed. Despite the selling point of Pushing, the series was virtually unknown, so most who saw it wondered probably what the fuck was going on, and as Variety predicted, the stiff Yank sci-fi competition won. The company Avco Embassy was in line to release it. With their flair for promotion, it may have been a success. But unfortunately, the American distribution went to Crown International that picked them to the post, and it was pushed out with very little promotion and very little fanfare. Both the United Kingdom and American editions are equally tip-top. Studio Canal releases a scrumptious high-definition Blu-ray in the UK with commentaries from Roberta Tovey and Jenny Linden, whilst Kino Lorber's American edition sports a beautifully restored print with composer Mark Ayres, known for his Doctor Who sound alchemy for the series, supervising the audio track, restoring dialogue, sound effects, and some music missing from previous masters. The film is also available on 4K from Canal in a double dose of the Doctor special edition, with this film and its companion piece, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, but more of that one in a bit. Oh, I love this film. I was first enchanted by it when it was shown on TV in the United Kingdom and was suitably mesmerised by it. It was my first introduction to the original Dalek serial, and as at the time it wasn't available anywhere on any home medium, I recall even turning down the colour on the television so I could imagine what the original TV series was like. Seriously, I was that much of a geek for the show. Although many find flaws, my sincere fondness for this adventure overrules any naysayers. It has been a staple Saturday feel-good film, regularly popping up in the mornings on the BBC, with its first outing on TV in 1972 on Saturday primetime, wedged between this programme
Gunsmoke, starring James Arness as Matt Dillon,
and this family favourite. Scheduling unique to the era. For me, Doctor Who and the Daleks is brash, well-paced, and with its clashing palettes, seals the deal. The casting is spot on, with Linden doing her best with the limited amount of demands the script allows her. But surprising here is Roberta Tovey, who, considering she is much younger than the TV Susan, is highly endearing and much braver than her TV counterpart. A veritable little kick-ass, and the movie's all the better for her being in it. Castle comes into his own as Ian once he settles down, but of course Cushing steals most scenes he appears in. Zabotsky did well, as he doesn't veer too far from the script, preferring to condense and tone down, but not really sacrificing the main narrative of Nation's script. While the film may not delve deeply into character development like the TV episodes, it excels in swiftly and effectively bringing Terry Nation's captivating and escapist plot to life. The movie prioritises pacing over extensive character exploration, resulting in a story with less depth but more entertainment value. However, this doesn't mean that Nation's thought-provoking themes of pacifism, cowardice, and genocide are overlooked. They are skillfully addressed without overshadowing the excitement and adventure found elsewhere in the film. The grandeur of the Dalek city entrance, with its expansive bank and imposing corridors, leaves a lasting impression, as does the hauntingly hued blue and green forests of Skaro. The redesigned Daleks, now bulkier and with their grating voices resonating through the city, maintain their imposing presence on the big screen just as effectively as they did on TV. However, it must be noted that the Thal's appearance has not aged gracefully. Their makeup and costumes seem somewhat dated in comparison. Gone are the Aryan supermen of the original, and here they are somewhat a cross between Robin Hood and a de-wigged drag act. But that aside, they somehow also fit well into the grander scheme of things. Even though I know the film back to front, just as the TV version, I still find myself watching it to the very end if I stumble upon it being shown nowadays. I guess it takes me back to my childhood, you see, somewhere safe and worry-free, just as I was when it made me feel like that many years ago, from those schoolyard bullies that made my early life a living nightmare. But we are not here to put a damper. Hamp as a row of tents, perfect wing-ding hijinks, and where here Doctor Who has a injection of 1960s Batman kitsch and a kaleidoscopic transfusion of pigments. This makes the whole thing an absolute treasure for me, warts and all. Doctor Who and the Daleks gets 4 exterminations out of 5 from yours truly. Simply, intergalactically adorable. In the UK, Amicus was doing very well and was beginning to get a name for itself, positively so. Vanguard in America was, alas, in a state of decay. Rosenberg decided to use Amicus's profits to cover Vanguard's debts. Subotsky was not impressed.
I think that Amicus and Vanguard should have no concerns with each other's finances,
Subotsky wrote in a letter to Rosenberg. Despite this, Subotsky trusted Rosenberg enough to do the right thing with the business acumen and focused on the next UK production. Inspector Holloway is assigned to investigate a series of gruesome murders. Each cadaver is left with a small lifelike doll by the corpse, a mysterious clue left behind by the assassin. As Holloway delves deeper into the case, he discovers a connection between the victims and a group of people responsible for the wrongful execution of a man named Mark von Sturm years earlier. Von Sturm's wife, Mrs. von Sturm, is one of the prime suspects due to her bitterness and desire for revenge. As the investigation progresses, Holloway uncovers dark secrets and hidden motives among the suspects, including Mrs. von Sturm, her son, and other members of the group. Can Holloway bring the murderer to justice before another victim succumbs to the retribution of the Psychopath? As Doctor Who and the Daleks blazed across the big screen, Subotsky began to work on their next project entitled Schizo. This was to be the third of a quartet of films for Paramount distribution. Robert Bloch was left entirely to supply the screenplay as Subotsky took a back seat. The title was dumped and replaced with The Psychopath. As psychological thrillers were doing well in the wake of Psycho, and Amicus looked to its competitors Hammer and their output with titles such as Taste of Fear, Maniac and Fanatic, this also contributed and shaped towards their decision. Bloch's name was also good to capitalise on the Norman Bates phenomenon and an ideal draw-in. Patrick Wymark was asked to return due to his fleeting but memorable performance in the film The Skull. This time Wymark was given star billing and does a cracking job of it too. Subotsky set the project up, but Rosenberg decided to up sticks and jet over to London from America to take charge.
I found Max could really be a bully when he wanted to be, and he had a nasty temper,
lamented Subotsky in an interview.
I'll admit I was never good at standing up for myself, and he just walked all over me. I was hurt and I felt pushed aside, but I let him get on with the picture and left him alone.
Although Subotsky kept his distance, Robert Bloch decided to visit the set en route to an after-dinner event in London and was pleasantly surprised and content with how things were developing. Amicus had invited Bloch before, however it was to be on his own steam. Bloch got on with them both unaware of the rift that had developed between them. Freddie Francis was asked to return as director, and the avant-garde sound of composer Elizabeth Lutyens was to return once more, who, by now, was something of an in-house composer for Amicus. This was her third score for the company. Things worked smoothly enough for Rosenberg at the reins, however, at the 11th hour, trouble bubbled when Rosenberg found the feature underran by 10 minutes. He was stumped with how to pad it out, and finally relented and went to see Subotsky, and no doubt ate humble pie along the way there. For the sake of the picture, Subotsky reluctantly agreed to assist and began writing additional dialogue for the actors who were still available, and putting in a scrapyard murder scene. Subotsky managed to stretch the feature. One thing, as originally filmed, was the ease it was to identify the killer, so this provided Subotsky with the opportunity to re-edit the picture and change the structure of the film, ultimately reshaping the denouement entirely, exactly how he did with The Skull. Subotsky recollected,
"We finished the picture, edited it, and we showed it to people, and they all guessed the murderer's identity. So what we did is every time Patrick Wymark opened his mouth in the next to last scene, we cut away from him and overlaid his dialogue, and every time someone replied, we cut away from them and overlaid their dialogue. We changed the whole last scene with post-sync dialogue, and that way we changed the murderer."
Freddie Francis understood the reasons behind the changes and knew of Subotsky's passion regarding editing.
Milton, apart from wanting to be a writer, wanted to be an editor. He cannot resist joining any two pieces of film together. I always jokingly said that if Milton's walking down the street and treads on a piece of film, he'll pick it up and try to join it to something.
The Psychopath generally received moderate success at the box office in the UK. It fared better when it was re-released, with The Skull as part of an Amicus double bill. The film was part of the British horror boom of this time, and the Robert Bloch Association no doubt drew in greater crowds. Despite this, it wasn't a blockbuster by any means. The film received mixed reviews from critics and audiences alike. It's one of those movies that found its audience but didn't necessarily break any records in particular. Bloch said of it,
"The idea is better than the film. Looking back, I reproach myself for not seeing that it would have made a better one-hour teleplay than it did a feature."
Originally, The Psychopath was a very difficult film to find. However, it's now got a superb Blu-ray release on the Kino Lorber label in America, and features a decent commentary. As of yet, this is yet to be released in the United Kingdom. The Psychopath is watchable, but very lightweight, and you can spot the cinematic stills, especially a blowtorch death scene that echoes Hammer's The Maniac. and of course the Psycho influence, which is obligatory. The main creepiness I found is due to the dolls, and in one scene in the background, dolls of various shapes and sizes can be seen twisting and contorting on chains in Mrs. von Sturm's doll repair room. It's a visual nod of things to come, and it's oddly macabre. I find dolls creepy at the best of times, to be honest with you, dear viewer, and usually the adults that own them I have found to be suitably fucked up too, so that sentiment reflected in the film is bang on.
Mama.
The other twisted little nod is the Oedipal undertone between the son and the mother, played by Margaret Johnson. She's an acceptable nut job, although her hysterical theatrics does veer into scenery chewing, and Johnson gets carried away so much, at times, she forgets her accent in her Teutonic tantrums, and when she does remember, think "Allo Allo" on cocaine. John Standing's jumpy performance is marginally better, and it took me a while where I recognised him from. Then I realised he was from the hugely popular Pygmalion sitcom The Other Half. You may or may not know that Standing is Sir John Ronald Leon, a 4th Baronet, and at 89 is still going strong, bless him. Whether after watching this he wants to be remembered by some as a heavily rouged living doll is debatable, but we all have to start somewhere.
Mama.
For me, the Psychopath veers very close to giallo territory and features a few of the tropes found in the genre. The dolls are a decently morbid little touch, however, those anticipating overt sadism with style, we really need to leave that to the Italians. Not a bona fide classic by any means, and a bit of an irreverent view, but although the Psychopath's plot is pretty much murder by numbers, it's produced and filmed in such an unconventional, creepy way, at times it makes it a slightly above average psycho thriller. The Psychopath gets 2.5 maniacal marionettes out of 5 from moi.
And so there was one. Ledoux.
None, sir.
Honeybee, honeybee, bzz, if you like, but don't sting me. Bzz, 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 honeybee, honeybee, bzz, if you like, but don't sting me.
Vicky Robbins, 60s chanteuse, has unfortunately collapsed from physical exhaustion. Upon the recommendation of her doctor, she is prescribed a period of convalescence. Vicky is sent off to Seagull Island, a remote location with a sparse population, providing a tranquil environment to recuperate, aside from a few eccentric individuals. However, before she can say Manuka, Vicky soon discovers that her respite might not be as peaceful as she had hoped for. On the island, a beekeeper is experimenting with training a legion of bees to become aggressive killers, triggered by concentrated adrenaline, resulting in a pile of corpses. Vicky finds herself not only avoiding becoming a target herself, but also following her instincts to uncover the truth behind the murders. A greater challenge lies in determining whom she can trust, as appearances on the island are deceiving. Will Vicky manage to evade the savage sting of death and the hives of horror? In 1941, novelist Henry Fitzgerald penned A Taste for Honey, which was later adapted into the screenplay for The Deadly Bees at the behest of producer Milton Subotsky. Paramount Pictures, in accordance with their agreement with Amicus Productions, requested an additional film, leading to the creation of this apicultural thriller. While the concept of a swarm of killer bees under the control of a reclusive beekeeper had previously appeared on television, notably in an episode of The Elgin Hour in the USA featuring Boris Karloff, this TV program, called The Sting of Death, brought the idea to the big screen and no doubt had influence on this movie. With Karloff in mind, Amicus approached Robert Bloch again to write the screenplay. Although Bloch initially envisioned Karloff and Christopher Lee in the leading roles, budget constraints led to the casting of Frank Findlay and Guy Dolman instead. The film also starred Susanna Lee as the main protagonist and the woman in peril, whom some may recognise from Hammer's unique production The Lost Continent, released 2 years later, and the seduced gym mistress in Lust for a Vampire in 1971. Lee was something of a scream queen, and her portfolio features a number of genre films and cult television. It is sad that she lost her life to a long battle with cancer in 2017, and despite her tenacity and bravery, the bloody disease got her in the end. Along for the ride also were Michael Ripper, moonlighting from Hammer and given a much more meatier role here, and despite being a landlord in this production, he isn't relegated to just drying glasses and eyeing up strange folk that comes into his inn. Catherine Finn stars as Dolman's down-at-heel chain-smoking wife Mary, and for me, eclipses the others. And you may or may not know that Catherine Finn is Michael Ripper's spouse in real life. The skills of Freddie Francis were once again enlisted for this film, however Francis's experiences during the production were notably challenging to the extent that he contemplated ending his directing career altogether, but we'll delve into that aspect later. Robert Bloch's screenplay greatly impressed producer Milton Subotsky, and so Subotsky thought it was in safe hands. But as things developed, this couldn't be further from the truth. Due to Subotsky requiring surgery, he was unable to be present during the filming and entrusted Bloch with full control over the screenplay. With Rosenberg also back in the UK, he reluctantly had to leave matters in the hands of others. During the penultimate week of filming, following his recovery, Subotsky rejoined the set of The Deadly Bees. Upon his return, he was met with bedlam and complete and utter chaos.
They gave me a copy of the new screenplay. It was full of yellow, pink, blue, green, and orange pages. Each alteration had a separate page color. I've never seen such a Technicolor script, and that's what Freddie had been shooting.
Freddie Francis was at his wit's end, having issues with cast members G'd up by the discord on set, and one actor struggling with their sobriety. To top it all, there were issues with the bees, who due to an unseasonal climate, were dopey and went kamikaze.
They had to be flown in from Australia because the movie was filming in December. We set them loose in the studio and they immediately flew into the lights and were killed.
Sources also indicate the tensions were nigh on unbearable as the set became a den of toxic blame culture. Subotsky locked horns with Rosenberg again, blaming him for the pandemonium. Rosenberg took a swipe at Freddie Francis and gained a new sparring partner, while Freddie Francis in turn blamed Robert Bloch, Anthony Marriott, who had rewritten the script, and other producers. According to Subotsky,
I found the rewritten script which Freddie had shot made no sense at all. It was full of unnecessary dialogue and had almost no discernible storyline. The first assembly ran over 2 hours. I spent several weeks with the editor in the cutting room, trying to turn the footage into a film and build a storyline out of what was shot. When I finally managed to do so, we found we had only 70 minutes of film. I then added a dream sequence and a flashback sequence where the murders were explained. This gave us 80 minutes. I think the film was unsuccessful artistically, but strangely enough, it was successful financially because one of the American television networks bought it for a network showing and paid more than the production cost of the film.
Freddie Francis's version of events painted a similar picture of discord.
There was very little of Bloch's script left in The Deadly Bees, which was an awful nightmare. I thought his script was terrible and refused to do it, so it was rewritten by Tony Marriott. We were in a mess because they'd already built a farmhouse set and we had to make sure we could still use it. It was the only time in my life when I thought I'd stop making movies.
When the final cut of the movie was in the can, it was shown to Paramount, who didn't like it at all. The film was shelved for a year until the April of 1967, when it was released playing second fiddle to the superior Theatre of Death, starring Christopher Lee. Stateside, the film fared no better, where it was paired on a double bill with the creature feature The Vulture. If you haven't seen it, dear viewer, it's where actor Achim Tamaroff turns into a half-man, half-bird monster and attacks people, such as actor Broderick Crawford. It should have really been renamed The Turkey, but for a laugh is worth the endurance, although an altered state of mind, through your choice of vice, may generate more satisfaction when viewing.
The gun, Judy! The gun!
Max Rosenberg, the wheeler dealer he is, managed to flog it as part of a package of films to American television for syndication, and fortunately, it made a very healthy profit.
Paramount were going to sell a package of films to American television. The income from such a sale can be split in any way, and Max convinced Paramount to allocate $400,000 from the sale to The Deadly Bees. That way, everyone, including the completion guarantors, was paid off, and the picture made a solid profit.
It's over to Olive Films in America, who released The Deadly Bees in a bare-boned Blu-ray package. It is yet to surface in the UK. The German release is the better option, solely for the extras and a commentary. However, these are not English-speaking friendly, so that's the best, I guess, we are going to get for this film.
Honeybee, honeybee, if you like but good, sting me.
To be honest with you, dear viewer, I don't actually mind the film. It's a bit plodding, and with the shortage of cannon fodder, 6 people on an island, we can't expect a rewarding body count. However, it does have some charm. I would champion Dolman's portrayal of smarmy villain Ralph Hargrove and Findlay's bumbling Dotty but rigid Manfred characters especially, and as I said, the performance by Catherine Finn as Hargrove's wife Mary is possibly the best of the bunch. Susanna Lee is also a decent enough addition, but alas cannot carry the story alone as Vicky, but isn't as bad as some have reported. When you look at what was going on backstage, we are lucky to have a troupe of actors that give it their all and maintain their standards, which is testament to a good thesp. No matter what shit is hurled at them, they do their very best, and here they just pull it off. Though I bet the majority were delighted to hear the words, "It's a wrap," after an arduous and grueling 5-week shoot caught in the crossfire. Oh, another revelation for me was seeing The Birds, from the UK, not the USA group with a Y, perform in the studio. We can see, if eagle-eyed enough, a young Ronnie Wood on guitar before the Faces and the Stones. Amicus usually achieves a high production on meagre budgets, but here they seem to have taken on a more ambitious project than they anticipated with The Deadly Bees. The map work required for the film appeared to exceed their financial capabilities as well as stretching the budget, as the type of film stock, without boring you with the technical side of things, could not handle the effects, so a more expensive film stock was needed to be used, tugging on the purse strings, requiring reshoots and hampering what was already a patience-trying project. Consequently, what was intended to be a terrifying bee attack doesn't really cut the mustard, despite the valiant effort, but the after effects of such an attack, glimpsed all too briefly, are pretty spiteful, especially in Catherine Finn's case. Poor dear Mary. It's also worth noting that the close-up shots of bees releasing their stingers into human flesh were rather effective intercuts, I felt. This aspect may have even led the British Board of Film Censors to order cuts upon the film's original release. I defy anyone who has been stung not to goose pimple or wince at these nasty little scenes. When watching it, I have to confess, I rather enjoyed the hokum, and that's exactly what it is, and admired also the legacy it left, especially in the Nature Gone Mad films that followed it. And it would be remiss of me not to mention other B-movies, pardon the pun, in its wake, a popular branch of the disaster film tree, hugely popular in the 1970s, such as the fondly remembered The Swarm in 1978.
Hey, wait for Paul.
I can't, I'm starving.
I will always remember this from a very young age and featuring big names of the time such as Michael Caine, Catherine Ross and Richard Chamberlain, amongst many others.
Bees. Let's get the hell out of here. No, this way.
And also made-for-TV films, such as 1976's The Savage Bees.
Get back in your car.
Oh, please don't let this be happening.
Or another disaster movie simply called The Bees in 1978, starring none other than John Saxon and John Carradine.
It looks like these, thousands of them.
This film, despite being rather forgettable, did manage to pave the way for other natural horror films of the Apian kind, where Mother Nature strikes back, which, those sort of films I absolutely adore. Not one of the best, admittedly, but it does have its moments, and for me, not a complete shambles. Ideal for after pub viewing on a Friday night, I guess. I would give The Deadly Bees 2 jars of honey out of 5. Bzzz. In a dystopian London of 2150 AD, Doctor Who, accompanied by his granddaughter Susan, his niece Louise Who, and a resourceful popper named Tom Campbell, finds himself thrust into the future under the iron fist of the Daleks and their lobotomized minions, the Robo-Men. With the Daleks plotting to drill into Earth's core to steer the planet as a weapon of conquest in outer space, the clock is ticking.
When the Earth's magnetic core is extracted, we can pilot this planet to the vicinity of our own and occupy it.
Will Doctor Who and his fearless crew manage to derail the Daleks' sinister scheme and save planet Earth and the galaxy from imminent doom? After the setbacks with the Deadly Bees, which resulted in straining relations between Amicus and Paramount, Milton Subotsky saw an opportunity for a sequel to the hit Doctor Who and the Daleks, despite not reaching the blockbuster status or the giddy heights they had hoped for in the United States. The first Dalek film had struck a chord with audiences in the UK, so on January the 31st, 1966, cameras started rolling at Shepperton Studios on Daleks' Invasion of Earth 2150 AD, with British Lion stepping up to boost the budget. Thanks to executive producer Joe Vigoda's savvy move to secure additional funding from Quaker Oats, there's a fun twist of seeing Sugar Puffs posters sprinkled throughout the film. Whether or not they'll be a breakfast staple in 2150 AD is anyone's guess. Quaker also snagged an exclusive merchandising deal, with their cereal boxes becoming a quirky part of the movie's promotion. Originally eyeing the TV story The Keys of Marinus for his next feature film, Subotsky quickly realised the Vords just didn't have the star power of the Daleks. British Lion, the key backers, weren't too thrilled with the idea either, so it was back to the drawing board. However, inspiration struck when Subotsky revisited the televised Dalek story, Dalek Invasion of Earth, setting his sights on bringing this epic tale to the big screen.
What do you want? Stop! When I give the word, turn and dive in the water.
In this instalment, the plot takes a grittier, darker turn compared to the vibrant charm of Doctor Who and the Daleks. Peter Cushing happily returned as Doctor Who, with a stipulation that Roberta Tovey would reprise her role as his granddaughter Susan, a condition that was gladly accepted. While Roy Castle and Jenny Linden were unavailable for their original roles, Bernard Cribbins and Jill Curzon stepped in to fill their shoes. Notably, Cribbins had just wrapped up filming Hammer's She with Cushing, establishing a solid rapport between the two, and as Roy Castle, Bernard Cribbins was a hugely popular and recognised face to the British public, and another possible draw-in for the box office. This was the first main role for Jill Curzon, who up until that point had only starred in smaller parts on television, and sadly we never saw that much of her after her battles with the Daleks. Due to her beautiful looks, she featured heavily on the Italian promotion for the film, adding a bit of sex appeal to draw in the crowds in Italy, though where this scene happens in the film is anybody's guess, but as long as it helped the promotion, drawing in the Italian public and the lira, it really didn't matter that much. I wish she had done more though, and given the opportunity may have been another Scream Queen, as she had been in plenty of cult television shows before and after this stint. From the first film's team of special effects alchemy, Alan Bryce returned, saying that
Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD had a larger budget and was much more ambitious, much bigger in scope. There really was a big difference between them, especially in the geographical scope. There was a lot more work to do on the second film, and if there had been a third one there would have been a lot more work still. The Dalek flying saucer was, I think, designed by George Provis, and was about 3 feet in diameter. It was shot both against the sky and against a backdrop, suspended from a tower crane. When it first appeared over the Bond Street in London, it actually flew over the stage. We brought it in and lowered it down as a hanging miniature. We brought it in such a way that we were messing the perspective up so it actually looked as though it was further away. We also did that for the end sequence, just before it crashed.
Gordon Fleming returned to direct Dalek Invasion of Earth thanks to his adept handling of the production processes for Doctor Who and the Daleks a year before. While Freddie Francis had his own talents, and it would have been interesting to see how things were done with him behind the lens, the aftermath of the Deadly Bees left him needing a breather and probably a few Valium. Joining the cast was the charismatic Ray Brooks as freedom fighter David. Brooks was a hot ticket at the time, perfectly capturing the spirit of the swinging 60s, especially after his success in the film The Knack alongside Rita Tushingham.
What's this? Brown. I can't bear brown. This. What?
I have a friend coming down the stairs.
I have a friend in Newcastle.
This furniture
Doesn't impress me.
She won't feel like clambering over furniture.
Now, if she was an elephant, that would impress me. Tell me she's an elephant.
After being with me, a girl doesn't feel like clambering over furniture.
After an elephant, neither would you.
Are you a homosexual?
No. Thanks all the same.
Andrew Keir, known for his work with Hammer, was tapped to portray the gruff yet endearing Wyler. Interestingly, the role of Wyler was initially intended for Andre Morel, but he was tied up filming the sadly missing story for Doctor Who, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. While the chances of this story resurfacing are slim, we can always hope, as it's one I would love to see return to the archives. Versatile actor Philip Maddock brings the shifty Spiv Broccoli to life, an actor familiar to fans of the Doctor Who TV series. Not to be overlooked, Eileen Way makes a memorable appearance in this as the devious cottage hag.
You've done well. I knew they'd give us more food if you told them.
Forward, or you will be exterminated!
Adding another Doctor Who connection to her resume after her role in the very first story, An Unearthly Child, where she played the matriarchal leader of the tribe of Gum.
I will kill us all in the end. You should have killed the 4 strangers. Killed them.
I have said we will wait until orb shines again. Then they die.
The cast features many familiar faces. Such was the joy of the British film industry of the time, and of course our joy now of reliving these cult classics when we can look and look again at them and make cult connections. The production went along well, but unfortunately Peter Cushing took very ill during the filming, and so Fleming brought forward scenes without him to the fore. Cushing does look a little frailer than usual in this production, it has to be said. By July 1966, the Dalek invasion of Earth 2150 AD hit the big screen, and just in time for the lucrative children's holidays. Despite a bigger budget, better overall production values, a faster pace, and exhaustive publicity, the film did not generate as much revenue at the box office as the first Dalek outing a year before. One of the contributing factors towards this was the demise of Dalek mania, and that Doctor Who was beginning to lose its sparkle on TV, hence why in 1966, for the Doctor Who TV show, for those interested, it was a year of seismic changes. Concerning the movie, Variety said it was
a little too advanced for the main core of the Daleks' followers.
The Times lamented,
the second cinematic excursion of the Daleks shows little advance on the first. The cast, headed by a long-suffering, much ill-used Peter Cushing, seem able, unsurprisingly, to drum up no conviction whatsoever in anything they are called to do. Grown-ups may enjoy it, but most children have more sense.
The Financial Times bitched,
the script is dim, the direction sloppy, the acting variable to execrable, and the editing loose enough to mislay whatever dramatic excitement there might otherwise have been.
Oh dear. Max Rosenberg thought the distribution of the film was
a bloody mess.
Unfortunately, in America, the film was hardly released at all, leave alone reviewed. The third Dalek feature, based on the TV story The Chase, was shelved after this, and Amicus's love affair with the time and space traveller faded just like the TARDIS, on its way to its next adventure, except in Filmland, there wasn't one. We have to go stateside for Kino Lorber's release, which eclipses the Canal Studios UK release of the film because of the additional commentaries, and in my opinion is the definitive Blu-ray edition. For the 4K release, Australia brings us a double dose of the Doctor via Studio Canal, which is certainly a bells and whistles release for this cracking duo of sci-fi hijinks. Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD is another gem for me, dear viewer. I actually saw this film on video before Doctor Who and the Daleks and enjoyed it much as then as my inner child does now. We can certainly see Amicus pushing the boat out, and here they produce a wing-ding gem, more grittier than the first film, but not as starkly realistic as the television version. It still manages to ramp up the menace, and fortunately Subotsky didn't ditch iconic moments that were in the original TV show. It must have been a bloody hard job trying to reduce the overall 150-minute running time from the televised six-parter down to 84 minutes, but Subotsky et al. Pulls it off admirably. The only thing notably excised compared to the TV original is the ditching of the Dalek-created mutant, the Slither, and the love affair between Susan Foreman and David Campbell, but this isn't really a bad thing. To thrust the TARDIS crew into a post-apocalyptic world for this feature, entering a game of survival, must surely resonate with those who endured the Second World War, which had only come to an end a mere 21 years prior. The debris vistas, derelict landscapes in this film, the Nazi parallels drawn with the Daleks, and the sheer energy of resistance, bravery and tenacity endured by the human race as a whole can be glimpsed here in this motion picture, despite the juvenile audience it was aimed at. such parallels between a dark period of history such as World War II, which now generationally and worryingly is fading rapidly from the modern consciousness, and Terry Nation's vision for his original plot is evidently apparent. Fleming handles the direction well, with emphasis on high-octane performances and action, and thankfully a distinct lack of dither, comparing this film to the original Doctor Who and the Daleks, so it kind of makes this second outing better. All acting is on point, from Maddox's surly black market racketeer to Ray Brooks' defiant and courageous David, a rebel with a cause. And these characters are vital and glue the whole thing together steadfast. Roberta Tovey playing Susan again is on top form, and her teaming up with Tyler is endearing, as the seemingly toughest of all truly has a soft side when it comes to protecting her from harm. Curzon is much slicker than Lyndon was, although, as Lyndon, could have been given just a little more to do. That's the only downside here, dear viewer, to both these pepperpot features, is that to condense everything from the original TV series is nigh on impossible in such short running times, as it demands time to make characters more rounded, and this is just what's needed with both these films, but alas, due to the durational constraints, is lacking a little bit. The violence in this film is also ramped up, where, for example, David shanks a Roboman and a Roboman ropes a rebel. These scenes are censored from some prints, so be warned with the version that you watch. The stars of the show, as always, are the Daleks themselves, including a nifty red number which never ceases to fascinate, and it's easy to see why they are so iconic in pop culture, something really only the decade of the 1960s could have spat out, along with the Beatles, the Stones, Vidal Sassoon, Mary Quant, and Fanny Craddock.
Oh yes, I see. Very well. Well, tell us. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Crackle it. You see? Let me throw you another piece. Give you absolute confidence. Bingo. And bingo. And there it is. You can have those bits too. Now go away.
The Daleks, of course, just eclipse Peter Cushing's portrayal of Doctor Who, which here is beguilingly genteel. Wonderful stuff. I would consider myself a true Whovian, mainly for the classic series, and always will be. So despite some fans deriding the movies, I don't fall into that mindset, and am pleased both films were made to be enjoyed time and time again by people of all ages. For me, this movie just eclipses the first Dalek feature, so for pure retro nostalgia, comfort viewing, like a good fish pie, and the sheer trip that is the future according to 1966 in all its glory, this film gets 5 exterminations out of 5 from me. For pure entertainment, adventure, and action-packed cadence, just look at those beautiful Dalek motherships. What possibly more could you ask for?
Danger! Danger! The device has exploded, of course! Abandon mine area! Abandon mine area! Magnetic force past danger point! Abandon mine area! Abandon mine area! Look out! Let go, Jack!
Dashing Dr. Joe Burke leads a dedicated scientific team based in England focused on the search for extraterrestrial life. The team diligently monitors the vast expanse of space, listening for potential alien signals and indications of life beyond Earth. Along with Joe, the team further comprises of electronic specialist, the wooden Ben Keller, and a beautiful office manager with astigmatism called Sandy Lund. Their efforts are overseen by prissy Dr. Henry Shaw, who, due to the lack of tangible results, is inclined towards discontinuing the project, ranting, and then sashaying off in a huff. Adding to the pressure, Dr. Shaw has enlisted the services of a mummy's boy accountant, Mr. Yellowlees, to scrutinise the project's financial viability and ensure efficient use of resources.
Number 7.
Number 7. Good gracious. £75? Why, it can't weigh more than a couple of ounces.
Unexpectedly, the team's perseverance pays off when they intercept a signal originating from an asteroid. This discovery catapults them into an extraordinary adventure as they find themselves transported aboard a spacecraft, concealed within their own transmitter shed. Accompanying them on this unforeseen journey into outer space are Mr. Yellowlees and Mrs. Jones, a trolley dolly sporting a haircut found on Amazonian tree people. Together, this eclectic group of individuals must navigate the challenges of space exploration, confront unknown entities, and work collaboratively to save the Earth before it regresses to savagery, or the worst case scenario, becomes totally destroyed. Well, after the Lord Mayor's show with the 2 Dalek movies comes the shit card, with Amicus's foray into cheap, and I mean cheap, sci-fi schlock for the next 2 B, C, or D movie fillers, call it what you will. Still with a passion for the intergalactic, Subotsky and Rosenberg decided to shoot 2 features back-to-back on a meagre budget, and so the Terrornauts became a companion piece to They Came From Beyond Space, but more of that one later. Subotsky chose to adapt Murray Leinster's novel The Wailing Asteroid. Subotsky was fond of the novel, saying,
"What I liked about the Leinster book was that it dealt with an ordinary group of people who saved the Earth."
Subotsky then approached up-and-coming novelist John Brunner to write the script. However, Brunner wasn't keen on the novel at all, and tended to jettison most of the book's source material.
I wasn't particularly attracted to the book. In fact, quite frankly, I scrapped most of it. It was one of those, experimenter builds a spaceship in his backyard, stories that was quite common in the 1930s. I think I made it a little more reasonable and logical within the limitations of what the budget would stretch to.
Brunner said. Simon Oates was approached for the role of Joe, who most of you will know for his superb performance as Cavalier John Ridge in BBC's Doomwatch series, and elements of Ridge can be glimpsed in Oates' rendition here. To complement the gallant Burke, Zena Marshall plays Sandy Lund, whose main purpose is to look pretty, scream for Joe a lot, look pretty, fondle monsters, pat robots on the arse, look pretty, and get rescued. This is 1966 after all. Marshall had previously cropped up in Dr. No as Miss Tarot, one of Randy Bond's conquests in his first feature outing. The Terrornauts is Zena Marshall's last feature. Moonlighting from the Carry On films, a bewildered Charles Hawtrey was roped in to play Yellowlees, mainly as Patricia Hayes' stooge. Patricia Hayes sports a smashing chintz crimpling number as she dishes out the cups of tea and sloppy bon mots as Mrs. Jones. Max Adrian from Dr. Terror plays the harridan Dr. Henry Shaw, and finally of note, actor Stanley Meadow, known for numerous TV performances and parts in Sidney Fury's The Ipcris Files, and Nicholas Rogue's performance rounds off the perky planetary pentad as Ben Keller, all clearly in it for the money, or what little of it was dished out to them. Behind the lens this time around was Montgomery Tully, a stalwart of B-movie fare, such as The Hypnotist in 1957, and his last directorial effort, Battle Beneath the Earth, after the Terrornauts, also in 1967. Well, I guess working on such productions gave an extra shilling for the meter. Shepperton was also ditched for Twickenham Studios for the Spartan sets, which feature retro-futuristic designs, akin to something popping up on a Kandinsky painting. It is very Willy's Chocolate Experience. And no, you naughty people, this is not a euphemism for a sexual act. The usually reliable Les Bowie, aided by Ernest Fletcher, does their best here when it comes to special effects. However, due to the lack of budget, Bowie may have raided the kitchen drawer to give us delights as an alien base that looks like a pressure cooker, spaceships that could no doubt help whip up a souffle when not being suspended on wires, and a robot that we are waiting to topple over any minute. Although he does try his best to realise the hallucinatory creature that defies explanation from concept to cinema. Critics were predictably unkind, with the Monthly Film Bulletin lamenting
Murray Leinster's novel has been simplified and adapted for juvenile audiences, hence the Tea Lady in Outer Space, in this long-delayed companion piece to They Came From Beyond Space. The inspiration for the treatment is clearly Doctor Who, but even on this modest level, children are unlikely to be much impressed by the slapdash effects, the jerry-built sets and, in particular, a silly robot which seems permanently on the verge of falling apart. The same goes for the comic relief which, although in the care of the old radio partnership of Charles Hawtrey and Patricia Hayes, sadly misfires.
Variety were more impressed, possibly favouring pity than blame, when they said that
John Brunner has fashioned a tight little sci-fi programmer that holds the interest. Director Montgomery Tully has wisely spiced the action with comedy, ably handled by veterans Charles Hawtrey as a privacy accountant and Patricia Hayes as a Cockney charwoman. The special effects are not elaborate, but exceptionally well handled, especially a robot provided with its own personality. Tightly edited by Peter Musgrave, Terrornauts could hold its own on any sci-fi program.
Come to think of it, dear viewer, I'm wondering if Rosenberg didn't slip somebody a backhander for this review. The Terrornauts was released in 2 prints, the original runs at approximately 74 minutes, and another version, re-released in 1971 at about 58 minutes. The shorter version dispenses with explanatory dialogue, and the crustacean-clawed cyclopean chop suey extraterrestrial is nowhere to be seen in this version. Bizarre. The sadly defunct network distribution, how I was near to tears when they went under, UK release on DVD is the best to go for regarding the Terrornauts, which prior to this release was as rare as hen's teeth and practically forgotten. However, here they have the 2 versions, and surprisingly the quality isn't bad at all, oddly plumping for better visual quality on the shorter version as opposed to the longer cut. The longer version, I feel, is the better option to view, but has seen a few projectors in its time, as the lines and faded colour will tell you. This was available on Region 2 DVD only, and as yet, the Terrornauts has not benefited from the high-definition remaster treatment here, or stateside. Well, dear viewer, the Terrornauts is an oddity. What it has going for it, though, is the otherworldly score by Elizabeth Lutchens returning to the Amicus family, and some unintentionally humorous dialogue littered throughout.
I wouldn't fancy spending the night with one of them things. Look at all them spiky bits.
What do you make of that, then? It's a kind of vibrator. Don't you feel it?
Human beings in a zoo? Preposterous. I don't know about sharing a cage with you, darling. I mean, even if he only wants to say hello, come inside as your father, you know. Never did think much of foreign parts.
I feel these were probably meant sincerely, but have a new meaning with this movie, and fit admirably with double entendre that we Brits adore. Oates and Adrian seem the only 2 who focus on their roles with sincerity. The others seem to be in it for the lark or for the paycheck. In Hawtrey's case, I wonder if he knew what was going on at all, as he seems to have turned up to the wrong set, and carries on regardless. Oh, very droll crab. Although the Terrornauts sports Spartan settings, dubious performances, woeful special effects, even by 1966 standards, and a silly script, I did actually find it a rather charming, irreverent piece of intergalactic schlock on the flip side. Despite it differing from the book, the plot is an absorbing one, and once, to save on money, we get through the dialogue-driven first act, and once the hut of the scientists is whisked off into space, it gets marginally better. For pioneering, we have to give credit for the Terrornauts, as although the TV serial A for Andromeda, made in 1961, bucks the trend, this oddly quaint piece of celluloid irreverency stands out as one of the early science fiction films to explore the theme of searching for extraterrestrial life via communication, known here in this film as Project Startalk. This is actually a minor element in the novel, but was bolstered by Brunner's adaptation to move away from the outdated novice scientist theme he felt was no longer relevant. Some of it did appeal to my sense of humour, though little I have left. Hawtrey kickstarts it, as I find in Carry On Land. As soon as he minces into shot, I start to chuckle. But plenty of the mirth here is surely inadvertent, from the savages on the planet sporting green carpet on their bonces, to the swimming caps with random circuitry and wires glued onto them for the grand finale, and not forgetting the cheap matte shots of the moons where the smoke billowing from a volcano clearly rises up behind the planets. This will bring the odd guffaw in your viewing experience if you're anything like me. As crapola as it is, there is also a rewarding innocence to it, and a 60s Saturday matinee vibe too, which, shoddy or not, still manages to captivate and pleases our inner child. Definitely one for altered states of consciousness. What the Terrornauts lacks in finance makes up for in fondness, and is a fine example of stingy retro-futuristic quirk. The Terrornauts gets 1 lobster claw out of 5 from me. There are worse films I have seen. I would favour this one over Barbie any day, but definitely not Amicus's finest hour. But then I guess they never meant it to be in the first place. Dr. Curtis Temple investigates a series of mysterious occurrences involving strange meteorites crashing to Earth and landing in Cornwall. Temple finds that the meteorites are not just ordinary rocks, but actually house invisible extraterrestrial entities contained in the fragments. Dr. Temple gathers a team of fellow scientists to unravel the secrets behind these alien visitations. As the team delves deeper into the mystery, they find themselves embroiled in a complex web of deception, betrayal, and interstellar conflict. With time running out and the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, Dr. Temple and his peer group must use their scientific expertise, courage, and ingenuity to confront the unseen alien invaders and prevent an all-out cosmic catastrophe.
They came from beyond space to enslave the Earth. Look out! Only yesterday they were scientists, investigating strange meteorites that landed from space. Suddenly, they're dehumanized, blood-chilling hate robots, killer creatures, determined to destroy Earth.
Connections completed and quite satisfactory. We can now proceed with the next part of our plan.
They came from beyond space, and they brought with them such horrors as the world has never seen.
Please, I've got to talk to you.
Only one man whose brain they need the most has the power to resist them. Only he, dares crash their secret headquarters where they deep freeze humans to use as slave labor on their planet.
I warned you not to come here. Now you'll have to take the consequences.
Get out, quick!
They came from beyond space.
I was interested in making science fiction pictures that children could see, films that weren't violent, gruesome, or nasty. I love stories that have baffling events that keep the audience guessing, yet neatly interrelate at the end. The Gods Hate Kansas was a novel along those lines. Whatever is causing the strange events you assume to be evil. But are they? No. What I liked was at the end you discover the aliens are weak, potentially friendly. It was almost like a Cold War parable where your enemy turns out to be someone you could be friends with.
Therefore, the basis of this film was writer Joe Millard's The Gods Hate Kansas, first published as a serial in Startling Stories magazine in 1941 as the literary foundation for this second back-to-back feature with the Terrornauts. Sadly, most of the budget was spent on They Came From Beyond Space's companion piece, according to director Freddie Francis, who said,
"They used up much of the money on the Terrornauts. So we had no money to spend to give They Came From Beyond Space any style. It was pretty awful."
However, this isn't entirely true, as the Terrornauts came in at £80,000, whilst this movie was actually £120,000, and visually, despite Francis's dissatisfaction, it's the visually sleeker of the two. For casting the role of Dr. Temple, this went to actor Robert Hutton. This wasn't a cult first for Hutton either, as after his machismo image played out, he started to dally with genre films, landing parts in B-movie sci-fi pulp, such as The Colossus of New York in 1958, the Zombies from Space film The Invisible Invaders in 1959,
Full-circuit TV wasn't affected by the jamming.
They found us.
No, not yet they haven't. But they're looking. And that's the reason why.
The Walking Dead, inhabited by the invisible enemy, had left their spaceship nearby to search for the scientists.
the creature feature The Slime People in 1963, and as we've already seen in this programme, the woeful The Vulture, before starring here. Although, unlike Oates in the Terrornauts, for a dashing leading man, we are a bit shortchanged, but he does own a beautiful classic motor car, 3 years before John Pertwee's Doctor Who was whizzing about in Bessie. As his leading lady and love interest, we have the bee-sting-lipped Jennifer Jane in the part of scientist Lee Mason, who had previously come to the attention of Amicus through her work with them for Dr. Terror's House of Horrors vampire segment. Jane had also dallied with sci-fi prior to this, appearing in the Trollenberg Terror, She wrote 2 screenplays for the films Tales That Witness Madness in 1973 and Son of Dracula in 1974, both directed by Freddie Francis. Thirdly, and of note, is the appearance of Temple's buddy Farge, played by actor Zia Mohyeddin. It's rare to find a Pakistani actor in a main supporting role of this time, rather than the usual oil sheiks or Ali Baba tyrants that came with the nationality when UK film casting. You may recall him in the Avengers episode Honey for the Prince, and a wealth of television appearances, including the wonderful Jewel in the Crown. Sadly, we lost this great actor only last year, in February 2023. He was an exceptional thesp and orator, leaving a legacy of film and television behind him, though I doubt They Came From Beyond Space would have topped his CV. Finally, of course, Michael Gough waves his cape about a bit as Master of the Moon in this film, albeit in more of a guest appearance capacity. It's great to see him, though, as always.
Silence. Slaves do not speak without permission in the presence of the Master of the Moon.
Believe me, I am not your slave. If you should conquer and rule the earth, there will always be some who will fight against you.
Conquer and rule Earth? Why should we want to do that? What possible satisfaction or glory could we find in ruling a race whose most intelligent life force is little more than primitive savages compared with our vast knowledge?
When submitted to the British censors, parts of village folk collapsing with the space measles were trimmed, and even that was toned down, as originally the symptoms were to feature the villagers bleeding to death from every pore. So to secure an A rating, the equivalent now of a PG, these had to be trimmed. Unfortunately, when released as part of a double feature with the Terrornauts, They Came From Beyond Space bombed at the box office, and Amicus's foray into Interstellar were no more. Subotsky said of it,
"It was a good science fiction film that lacked only one ingredient for box office success, a star. We tried to get a slightly larger budget, but couldn't. The result was a good film with no names and box office failure."
The monthly film bulletin pithed,
"Despite some pleasant country locations and elaborate science fiction sets, this mechanically acted saga fails to ignite a single spark of interest, to obtain even a momentary suspension of disbelief."
Canal Studios have brought out a smashing remastered edition of this film in HD in the UK, sporting commentaries and the original theatrical trailer. It's worth every penny. One can't help note the similarities between this film and the superb Quatermass 2, or the similarities between this and the Outer Limits episode Corpus Earthling. And if we want to look again further back, the film It Came From Outer Space springs to mind, which had stranded Martians adapting human form while scouting for resources to fix their spaceship in order they could take to the stars once again. As a standalone motion picture, They Came From Beyond Space is certainly not novel, but an engrossing watch. It's somehow more adult in tone than the Terrornauts. Although Francis doesn't pull out all the stops and seems rather lackluster here, there are some of his signatures as a director, such as pleasurable reflection work and light and colour play, plainly evident where the possessed Lee Mason is probed by Temple and Farge. This is verging on pop art aesthetics, and it's plain to see Francis rather enjoys having Jennifer Jane as his muse. A couple of further highlights for me are the unleashing of the stone's energies as it absorbs into its hosts, and a wonderful bit of the film where Mason possesses a banker by using the stone which she has in her handbag.
This.
What sort of security is this?
Take another look.
Connection completed. Everything here is now ours.
As a Terrornauts, although the financial constraints must have been a nightmare to produce anything watchable, the plot is an engrossing one with comic book sympathy. There seems to be so much crammed here, and just as Millard's original publication, Subotsky doesn't seem to rein in something originally lacking in order, and for such a third-rate effort in terms of production, They Came from Beyond Space has an awful lot to say in concept and execution. I guess that's why They Came from Beyond Space is the main course in the double feature, and the Terrornauts was the belch after it. I would give this film 1.5 possessions out of 5, and although these scores are low, there are and were far worse out there. Well, wasn't that a lark? I hope I haven't outstayed my welcome. I was going to review more, but as we will now witness a transition for Amicus in terms of their output, and return to portmanteau, I thought we'd look again at all of that next time around. I would take you to smell the barbed wire roses at the torture garden, then see you scream, and scream again, before we pop to the house that dripped blood. No doubt there'll be some treats in between, but only if you're on your best behaviour. Until next time, on Look, and Look Again. Cheerio.
You can have those bits too, now go away.
Yeah.